Alright, here we are, we're back with another video for Blender for our troll modeling. Now of course when you first bring up Blender, you'll see kind of the splash screen here. That's where on your first run there'll be kind of that industry standard option there. It'll kind of say Blender with a pull down. Remember the intro video I did, there's actually two videos I've already posted. There's an intro video that kind of goes over how to turn that on. I'll show you in a minute again though too. But you notice when you first come up, by default, it actually wants to create kind of a general kind of cube in there that you can work from. But also you notice it has recent files, so you can see there's kind of my troll Blender file right there. So I can just click on that and open up troll. Now of course you have file open, just like you have save, and that's all the same kind of quick keys you'd expect normally, right? Most stuff works that way. So save, open, all the same quick keys work the same as you expect them to from Maya. It's just saving a Blender file. Just like edit's got undo and redo, and those are all the same quick keys and work exactly what we expect them to. But of course, in the edit menu, preferences, that's where you have the Keymap section, and at the very top is that industry compatible. So you see how it has Blender 2.7 series, and we're in the 2.8 series now. And there's industry compatible, and this is going to make it have a lot of the same quick keys that and workflow Maya does, right? Particularly since we're all used to Maya, it's great. All right, it's great. It makes it not that hard to transition into Blender. All right, so just kind of a quick reminder about that stuff. So remember Alt left, Alt middle, Alt right. That'll allow you to kind of do that stuff. So really what I want to do for today's video, since we do have kind of a shorter week, is I just want to show you kind of how to get a shoulder loop in, how to smooth the model up once, and why we're going to do that. And also just want to show you a little more about some of the shaping tools like the tweak tool and proportional editing. Really this week is just about kind of getting kind of the major block in, right? Like the arms, legs, head, kind of the shoulder edge loop in there, and just do some shaping to it, right? Remember, end of the week is when these kinds of things are going to be due, right? Kind of we have our daily exercise, which is usually just one question, like on a vocab word or a shortcut key we've already gone over, right? And they're worth a little bit of points. It's just a way to give you some lab points and do attendance, kind of keep track of attendance somewhat. Other than that, our big kind of weekly thing for 10 points is basically getting to the stage where I'm at by the end of the week, right? Kind of having your troll built to the stage that I've done in the videos that I posted that week. That's what your weekly project's going to be. And that's just going to be 10 points. You can save a screenshot, right? In fact, you can always just do print screen, but you will see that in window there is save screenshot. So technically you can actually save a screenshot right from Blender, which is kind of neat, right? You know, we're used to Maya and Mudbox, and those are actually quite cool, and they have some of their own strengths, but Blender in its current state's pretty good, pretty neat. And remember, it's fully free, right? A lot of you guys at this point have probably already found that it'll run on your computers where Maya and Mudbox wouldn't, and we can even kind of like download the extraction file, right? You just go to the where you download Blender, and there's that little pull down, and it says Windows Portable. You can just download a zip file, extract the zip file, and then instead of installing Blender, you just go into that folder that you extracted all the Blender stuff to, and just run the Blender executable, and it should just get you past having to install it if you have to install it, like say on a Surface Pro or like your school devices where they don't give you admin privileges. That's why we switched to Blender, because basically from what I've done and looked at, everybody should be able to run it. And that way we can actually do class reasonably normally. But it's kind of cool. So what you guys can easily do is just do screenshots, and you see how you can kind of just save it, right? So kind of gives you some options right there where you can save it to and all that stuff. So it's kind of a neat little thing. You can save a screenshot. Just kind of want to make sure you guys kind of got to see that there is that window save screenshot. And that can be a great way to just save a screenshot at the end of the week and just kind of submit it, right? Turn it in, and that way I can see where you're at. And more than anything, it's kind of just looking at the fact that you're at where you should be, right? And this first week's kind of really a first week trying it, so, you know, we're going to figure it out. Or you guys are going to figure it out, you know? All right, so what I wanted to do is, like I said, I wanted to show you guys how to smooth the model up once. I wanted to show you guys how to put a shoulder loop in. Because one of the things about character modeling, and we didn't really talk about it as much in the last video because I just wanted to get you guys starting to build it, was that we have edge loops, right? And we talked about it on our spaceship, right? That edge loop should follow the contours of the surface you're creating, right? With the spaceship, it was, you know, if there's kind of like a cylindrical shape that you wanted to fan out, you'd kind of start with a cylinder, and then you'd extrude border edges off from there. whatever weird paneling shape you wanted to. You'd extrude the border edge out and kind of have it follow the shape that you wanted to, right? To make your models as efficient as possible, but also look pretty good in low resolution, you really want to try to build those edge loops to follow the actual forms that are there. If you just try to brute force it with a lot of polygons, you have a far less efficient model. So good edge loop modeling is really about making structures that will look right, but also animate well, but also are just efficient. Now with the spaceship doesn't really deform. It doesn't change its shape, right? It's a hard surface. Characters actually change shape. They bend, they squash, they stretch. So we have to look at how that's going to affect models, but also kind of how the muscles and bone structure underneath kind of create that structure. Now, we kind of were able to automatically, just through this, kind of, through a cube, putting a few edge loops in, extruding off, create kind of the major structures, right? Because your arms and your legs primarily are just extended structures, right? They're those branched structures and forms. And extrusions are great at doing that, and it gives us a lot of the edge loop form that we want, right? Legs and arms are pretty linear, and so this core edge loop form, with the exception of adding some more edge loops later on for like the elbows and knees, is going to work pretty well for that, right? And even the way we've got the legs coming out of the body kind of mimics and functions within how your leg moves. It only bends a little bit this direction, forward and backward. So even this kind of linear structure here works pretty well, primarily for the torso and hips, and even the head form, right? We've got an edge loop in here for the neck. So at this core blocking in stage, right, the default kind of extrusions do a pretty good job of giving us our main edge loops. And the reason why I put the edge loops in where I did and I extruded where I did was to give us that proper form, a form that would work pretty well for shaping, but also would deform pretty well. So yeah, but here I wanted to explore a little bit today less typical edge loops, right? Because when we get to the shoulder is a bit more interesting, right? The shoulder is actually a combination of three kind of main muscle groups: your pectorals right here, right? Your deltoids right there, and then kind of your trapezius right back here, right? And the way it kind of creates this muscle contour is kind of, it flows through and up around the arm. So it's you kind of have a loop that goes up through here and around through there. We often call this the pectoral girdle. Some people call it the pectoral cowl because it's kind of like the bat cowl wrapping kind of around your kind of upper neck, kind of shoulder area. And that kind of edge loop is going to do a better job of giving you a more realistic shaping and a more realistic animation for this area, because the actual way these muscle groups work together is they kind of go together here, but then wrap up around there to create this shape. So this is the kind of shape that actually mimics the way those three muscle groups interact in a much more accurate way. So the question that becomes, well, how do we put that edge loop in, right? Up to this point, the only real way we've seen a lot of to add edge loops, for the most part, we've dabbled with it here and there, adding edge loops on selected stuff, was the normal edge loops where it just adds the whole edge loop in, right? And I do actually want one more in here because I do like my edge loop for this to come out a little bit further out into the arm. So I'm going to quickly just make sure that I'm in edge mode, right? Remember that's 2. 2 is the quick key for that. Remember they are right up here though. Kind of as long as you're in, you hit 1, 2, or 3, you'll kind of go into a normal edit mode, right? So 1, 2, 3, right there. We want to be in edge mode because that gives us our loop slicing functions, right? So if you right click, of course it brings up most of your menus. Now a lot of this stuff would be an edge right here, right? Or face right there. But if you right click, there's our loop, cut, and slide, right? So we can hit loop, cut, and slide. And what we could do is we could see how we could just kind of put in an edge loop right there, right? So it allows us to quickly put an edge loop in, right? So keep that in mind, right? Keep that in mind. Of course, if you go in here, you'll often find some of the same controls in there, sometimes not. Kind of depends on where you're at. You'll see there is actually a loop cut here. And remember, if you right click, you can add a change shortcut, right? So you can kind of add your own shortcuts. So some of these tools you'll see kind of right over here, kind of the main ones here. Stuff that you maybe didn't use as much, right? You can right click there. But that's kind of one of those neat little things. You can kind of assign some of your own quick keys. There's the extrude, right? And you can see if you right click on it, change shortcut, right? And it actually gives you the ability right here, and I could just say control up. Let me try it one more time. Change shortcut, control E. That Should be working here. Come on. Let's see here. Kind of trying to remember how I did that. Let's see here. And it looks like it's actually assigned there now. Control E. So keep in mind that you can change shortcuts from there. If you want to, right? You can always just use the right clicks. That way you can kind of get some stuff set up. Like Control E is the quick key in Maya for extrude. You know, for my loop slice, I kind of put in the simpler Moto quick key for that stuff. But that's kind of one of those things you can do, right? You can just right click, change shortcut, remove shortcut, kind of stuff like that. It's one of the things I actually did for up here, right? One of the tools I'm going to talk about to you guys today is, remember, if you hold down left mouse button on one of these tools, particularly on the sidebar here, you can actually pick the different ones. And you see how I kind of set this circle select, which is drag select, to C, and then I set the tweak to T, right? You can use kind of any of these quick keys you want to, but you just turn it on, and then if you right click on it, change shortcut, you see I can just hit T to kind of make that that shortcut. So yeah, just keep that in mind. But of course you can just right click, and a lot of these context sensitive tools for the edge will come in here, like extrude edges. So you can start to shine some quick keys if you want to, pretty easily that way. It's kind of up to you on how you want to do that. But right clicking will bring up those tools as well. So in this case, what I want to do is I want to stay in edge mode, right? So 2 for edge mode. And what I want to do is I want to use that circle select, right? So remember, if you go up to right here and you left click, or hold down left mouse button, sorry, you'll see that there is circle select there. Like I said, I did assign a quick key to it. That makes things a little faster, right? And we're in edge mode, so what I can do is I can just left click drag, right? You just hold down left mouse button and move your cursor, just like drag select in Maya. And then we can rotate around, right? Alt left mouse button. Remember, shift, just like in Maya, will allow you to add to selection, so just hold down shift. So particularly, a lot of software uses a lot of the same quick keys, and particularly if you turn on industry compatible for Blender, it tries as much to mimic Maya, because honestly, Maya is the industry standard. So you can select kind of these edges, right? And so you can kind of see I'm selecting the edges that go kind of not into the neck, right? This edge loop right up here is the neck, that face loop, I should say. And the one below the arm right here is kind of for your abdominals and your oblique muscles, right? But what I want is I wanted these edges here that are kind of going into the arm, right? Now you see I go one into the arm, that's why I added this edge loop here. But then I go up, because we want this edge loop to wrap up and around. And then I kind of select the exact same ones on the other side, right? But they should be going into the arm. Now what we want to do is if we right click, you'll notice we don't really have the same loop, cut, and slide, right? So what we actually want to do this time, instead of loop, cut, slide, is subdivide, right at the very top. And you'll notice what this does is it actually puts an edge loop in based on what's selected. Now I'm not quite done, because it does kind of leave this quad structure here, which really is not bad. That's actually not, if you really, really wanted to leave that, that would still work fairly well. But I like to have it a little bit simpler, right? And this will give me an ability to show you another thing that Blender can do. But you notice that if you right-click subdivide on edges, instead of loop cutting, what it does is it actually subdivides, right, the selected edges. So this is like Maya's connect, right? We've seen it a little bit here and there, particularly for those of you who've been with me for like almost 2 years now, but even this whole year, you've probably seen and played with connect somewhat. So believe it or not, Blender has it. It's just called subdivide, and you want to do it to edges. Now you'll notice that since this is still active, we can see down here in the bottom left corner, there's a little kind of subdivide, little kind of bar here with a little triangle. And we can click on that triangle, and you'll notice that it actually opens up this stuff right here. And what we can do is, you'll see there's a quad corner type. We can click on that, and let's see here, turn create n-gons off, straight cut. So if you turn create n-gons off, right, and you switch to straight cut, what it'll do is it'll put an edge loop in here that just goes straight through there, right? It doesn't try to create extra geometry in here. It just puts edges exactly through the edges that we selected. It will create a triangle and an n-gon here, and that's okay, because we're going to smooth this soon, and that's going to turn those all back into quads anyways, right? But it is kind of neat to know that when you do use a tool, there is usually kind of down here in the bottom left corner, this little menu, and you can click on the triangle, open it up, and there's options. But if you turn create n-gons off and you change the quad corner type to straight cut, it'll do it like this. So kind of neat, and I'll close that down so I can click off to deselect it. And now we've added a shoulder edge loop that goes through here. And in fact, if we just double click on it, right, it selects that edge loop. So we have a shoulder loop that goes through the pectorals up into the arms and around. Now, at this point, we also still have our mirror modifier on, right? The nice thing is that stuff stays on, so when you come back in, mirror's already set to go. Our subdivisional modifier is already applied as well. I want to do a little more shaping, because that's kind of the other couple of things I want to show you guys today, with shaping and smoothing. So in this case, I want to go back to the very kind of top little up here, and we'll left click on that, right? And there's the tweak tool. Instead of circle select, there's tweak. Like I said, I've already assigned quick keys to these, and we're still in edge mode. But remember the tweak tool, and we saw this a bit on our spaceship, right? But you'll find with characters and creatures, it'll even be more useful. What the tweak tool does is instead of having to select and then move, you just left click drag and it selects and moves at the same time. It just kind of takes out that extra little step in the process of shaping. So you see how I can kind of just rotate my views and just kind of really go in here and just kind of move these shapes around a little bit more to kind of create more of the form of what I'm looking for, right? So I can kind of bring these up a little bit. Remember, you can hit 3 to switch to face mode, and your tweak tool will still be on, so it's kind of cool. It makes it a little easier just to kind of make some of those minor adjustments there. I can hit 1 for vertex, and we can do some vertex tweaking if we want to. And you see, I'm kind of just trying to make sure to pull out this kind of pectoral shape a little better, right? So I'm kind of getting a little bit more of kind of an actual shoulder shape in there. But remember, you can keep your tweak tool on and switch between your selection types. 1, 2, 3. And that's going to make it a lot easier for us to kind of come in here, and I can bring that edge out a little more, this one in a little bit more, maybe that one in a little bit more there. And it just kind of allows us to kind of tweak these forms a little bit more to kind of get our kind of pectoral kind of shaping in there. So kind of keep that in mind, that the tweak tool is really, really cool, right? Of course, you can just use your regular, hold that left mouse button, select, right? And just hit W for move, and you can always just move, grab the handles and move it just along that axis, or just along that axis. Remember, middle mouse button will do free move, right? We'll just move based on the camera. Tweak tool's doing that also, right? It's just that you don't have to do the selection and then the move, right? That makes the tweak tool a little bit faster. So tweak tool's cool to know about. Great feature to know that's in there. So that allows us to tweak kind of that deltoid area a little bit better. And like I said, you can keep tweaking, right? I can come back in here in edge mode and just kind of move some of these back in a little bit more for shape. We can even come in here and you see how I can kind of maybe adjust. Remember, be careful a little bit with kind of that center line, right? It can kind of be a little bit weird sometimes because of the merge over here on the mirroring feature. Like I said, this is actually one of the areas I definitely feel like Blender is not as good as, say, Modo or Maya. It's kind of one of those areas that I'm like, I just wish it was a little bit better in Blender. But it's good enough, right? It's usable. So keep in mind that you might want to be a little bit careful with that. Maybe go to 3 for face mode, right? You might find face mode works a little better for kind of tweaking those centers. And these are the little things that we're just going to have to get a little bit more used to when we're working in Blender. But you see how Blender honestly still is pretty darn useful and works pretty darn well. And you just got to switch between it a little bit, right? So a little bit about the tweak tool and some of our functionality and how that works. Now what I want to do really quickly here is I want to smooth this up, right? Because we'll notice that if we kind of go into the kind of the subdivisional modifier over here, right? Because remember, I've got the kind of little blue wrench over here on that's showing us our modifier. One of the things that you can do, of course, is you can kind of turn it off, right? You can kind of see that the functionality for not showing all of it, you can turn it off. And you see that that's actually what the low res would look like. Super, super blocky, right? So remember, what we're doing when we actually use the smooth preview, the subdivisional surface in here, is we're using it as a shortcut, right? We would have to add all of these edge loops in anyways, right? And if you're going to use smooth preview, one of my biggest rules is always smooth the model at some point, right? If you're modeling in smooth preview, you should smooth it. You want your low reses to look good, right? So we're just using this as a great shortcut, right? We've now got a pretty good block in for this, right? And you definitely want to get your arm, leg, head, shoulder edge loop in, get some decent shaping before you do this smooth. But what we want to do is we want to apply this as kind of a final, make it final, make it real, right? Remember, Maya actually has that smooth that it truly subdivides it. Here, all you have to do is hit 4 to go to object level, right? So 4 takes you to the object level of the model. And what you can do is you can actually go to your subdivisional modifier, make sure kind of the viewport's set to 1, right? So it'll subdivide using just that first level. And we can hit apply. Now if I go back to 3, you'll see that there's our faces, and you'll notice where we had 1 face, we have 4. And that means we did a subdivisional 1 level. The nice thing is your mirror is still working, but your subdivisional modifier is now gone, right? Now we are planning on smoothing it one more time, so I can go right back to my add modifier area here, right? Because remember, it's this blue wrench. So if you're not in that blue wrench area, click on the blue wrench. We can go back to add modifier, and we can go back to subdivisional surface. Now, when you do that, usually you have to kind of tell it to kind of that little triangle one right there to be on, so it kind of just shows you the full smooth preview. But you notice how that end gone and those triangles are gone? We do have some stars there, but we naturally have stars on certain parts of the models, and in later videos we'll talk about it more. But now we have kind of a decent kind of low res, right? If we turn it down to low res, you can barely see the difference between the two. So believe it or not, this is a great shortcut, right? And believe it or not, when we're done with this guy, this model's still only going to probably be about 15, 20, 25,000 triangles, which will work in the vast majority of game pipelines. So that gives us a pretty good start for this. The last thing I wanted to do for you guys was to show you proportional editing if you want to use it. You don't have to, but you can use it. And it works with any tool. So if I select face and I hit W for move, you'll see up here, there's kind of what looks like a little kind of like peak, right? You can click on that, and you'll see what it does is it kind of gives you this fall off manipulation, right? You'll see there's kind of, when I start to actually move it, you'll see there's this circle that shows up. And what that does, that means that this actually has an effect on more than just this face. Like if we click it off, see how that just that face moves? Whereas if we click it on, you'll see how kind of some other faces around it move a little bit. This is like Maya's soft selection. In fact, the quick key for turning it off and on is the same, B, right, for off and on. Now, page up, like if I start to move it and I hit page up and page down, you see how kind of the actual proportional edit falls off. So that's page up and page down on your keyboard. And you see how it kind of expands the effect of how far that falls off. So this could be a great way to kind of do some kind of cool shaping on this model. Now, of course, this works with your tweak tool as well. So if I left click and I pick tweak, you'll notice I can come in here and I can start to tweak faces or edges down. So I can switch to edge mode and start to tweak those edges. Like I said, we can just hit page down if we want to have a little bit less. But you'll notice how it kind of really allows us to start to kind of tweak some of this a little better, right? Of course, B will turn it off, so we can kind of come back in here and I can maybe bring these in a little bit more to find that neck muscle a little bit better. Those guys can come in. We can start to bring this edge up and in to start to define, as well as these, to kind of start to define that kind of armpit detail a little bit better. So this is how we can kind of come in here and start to kind of really define these shapes better. These edges right here can start to come in to define kind of the clavicle shape a little bit better. Number 1, you can switch to vertex, so if you need to make some vertice moves, you can. 3, of course, will do faces, so you can still come in here and adjust faces as well. Maybe T for edge, you know, so we can come back in here. And you see how that actual merge is working a lot better now? We've got a little more geometry, so you'll find that that kind of merge kind of handles itself better kind of the further you go along. And if we just bring some of these edges forward and some of them back in, you see how we can kind of create valleys and creases that allow us to define the armpit detail, kind of some of that pectoral form, and even kind of that little clavicle detail, right? That's kind of that your collarbone, that little bone kind of right above your pecs, kind of right below your neck. And see how you can just easily come in here with just moving some edges, either with proportional on or off, and you could do some cool little adjustments to kind of really kind of define this form kind of even better. right? So I think that'll be a great place to kind of stop for the video, but it does give you some shaping tools, right? You can kind of come in here and use things like proportional if you want to, things like the tweak tool, right? And now you can see we have a lot more geometry to shape with also. So I think that'll be a great place to stop for this video.